You know, when you think about it, Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark didn't just kick off a movie franchise. He launched an entire cinematic universe. But to pull that off, the character had to be more than just funny and charming. He had to feel real, deeply human. So today, we're going to dig in and try to solve the personality puzzle at the very heart of the icon that started it all.
Behind this one iconic line lies one of the most complex personalities in modern movies. I mean, fans and experts have been debating this guy for over a decade. He's a genius, a billionaire, a playboy, a philanthropist. He seems like everything at once. But what's really, truly driving him?
So that's the big question we're tackling today. Is he a success-driven achiever, or is he a pleasure-seeking enthusiast? We're going to use this really cool personality system called the Enneagram to get to his deepest motivations and figure out, once and for all, who Tony Stark really is. Let's dig in.
Here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll get a handle on our main tool, the Enneagram. Then, we'll look at the actual evidence from the movies, trace his entire character arc from Iron Man all the way to Endgame, and finally, we'll talk about why getting this right is so important for the whole MCU.
Okay, first things first. To solve this puzzle, we need to understand the keys we're using. And for this investigation, our master key is the Enneagram.
So what is the Enneagram, really? Well, it's not just about what you do, it's all about why you do it. It's a system with 9 basic personality types, and it really hones in on our core, often unconscious motivations, especially how we end up reacting when life gets stressful.
The whole debate around Tony really comes down to these two types. On one hand, you have type 3, the achiever. They're driven by this deep need to feel valuable, so they're always chasing success and admiration. On the other hand, you've got type 7, the enthusiast. Their core motivation is to just feel satisfied, so they're always chasing pleasure and fun to avoid pain. So which is it? Is Tony trying to win our respect, or is he just trying to have a good time?
Now, to really get to the bottom of this, we've got to talk about a super important idea in the Enneagram called the psychological trap. Think of it as this specific unconscious belief that keeps each personality type stuck in a loop. It's the main conflict they have to overcome to grow, and for us, it's the most important clue we have.
So, here's where the rubber meets the road. A type 3's trap is this feeling of, I have to perform and achieve just to be worthy of love. But a type 7's trap is completely different. It's, I have to constantly chase pleasure and reframe anything bad into something good so I don't have to feel pain. One fears being worthless, the other fears being trapped in their own pain. Which one sounds more like Tony Stark?
Okay, let's put on our detective hats and start digging into the evidence from the films. If we apply these ideas to what Tony actually does, we should be able to see which one of these psychological traps he falls into over and over again.
All right, our first big clue pops up right at the beginning of the first Iron Man movie. Tony is being given this huge, prestigious award, a moment of peak admiration. And where is he? He's at a casino, gambling. I mean, come on, a type 3 whose whole world is built around getting respect for their achievements, there's just no way they'd be anywhere else but that ceremony.
And that really forces you to ask, what's his real goal here? Is he looking for admiration, or is he just looking for a distraction? Yeah, sure, he's the center of attention at the casino, but it's a source of fun and excitement, not professional validation. He's running away from boredom, not running towards approval.
This points to another really key difference. Type 3s are what you call other referencing. They're always focused on what other people want, and they change their image to match, sometimes even losing themselves in the process. But type 7s? They're self-referencing. They focus on their own plans and their own pleasure first. And let's be honest, Tony's story is never about losing his identity to please somebody else. If anything, he couldn't care less what most people think of.
And this all leads us straight to the absolute core behavior of a type 7, compulsively chasing fun to escape anxiety and pain. I mean, that perfectly describes Tony Stark in the first act of Iron Man. He's just living in this bubble of pleasure, completely ignoring the real-world consequences of his work.
And hey, if you need the smoking gun, the absolute definitive proof, just look at this moment from Iron Man 2. He's under this immense stress, thinking he's about to die, and what does he do? He just hands his entire company over to Pepper because, as he says, it's boring. He just needs to escape.
This behavior right here, it just solidifies the case. It tells us he can't be a type 3. Because when a type 3 is under stress, they double down. They work even harder to prove their worth. A type 7, though, they look for the exit. And Tony is the ultimate escape artist, always looking for the next distraction from his pain. So, okay, we've made a pretty strong case that he's a type 7. But does that label actually fit his entire story?
His whole arc. Let's trace his journey of growth and setbacks across the entire saga and see if it holds up.
We can actually map his whole journey out. You can see his first big moment of growth in Iron Man, where he finally confronts reality. Then, in the sequels, he kind of retreats into his lab to solve problems when he's stressed out. That path eventually leads to the disaster of Age of Ultron, where his sense of responsibility goes way too far. And then finally, in Endgame, he finds that true state of balance.
So when a type 7 starts to get healthy, they do what's called a growth move, and they start to take on the best traits of a type 1, the reformer. They get more responsible, more principled. And that is exactly what happens when Tony gets out of that cave. He finally knows what he has to do, and he stands up and says, "I am Iron Man."
But when a 7 is focused or stressed out, they can also move to type 5, the investigator. This is a predictable pattern where they become more introspective, more concentrated. And this totally explains those moments of reclusive genius, right? Where he just locks himself in his lab for days on end to solve some impossible problem, just like he did to save his own life.
And this all builds and builds until we get to Endgame. And here, we see a truly healthy, integrated 7. He's living a simple, quiet, grounded life. He's not chasing the next big thrill anymore, because he's finally figured out that one deep, meaningful life is way more satisfying than 1,000 fleeting experiences. He doesn't need to escape anymore.
So we solved the puzzle. He's a type 7. But so what? Why does this even matter? Well, the answer reveals this really beautiful symmetry that's right at the heart of the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Okay, this is where it all clicks together. It's so cool. Look at the dynamic between Tony and Captain America. Tony, the self-interested type 7, spends his entire arc growing towards the idealistic and responsible type 1. And at the same time, Steve Rogers, the super principled type 1, learns to finally pursue his own happiness, moving towards type 7. They literally grow towards each other, and it creates one of the best character dynamics in movie history.
So, let's wrap this up. The big takeaways are pretty clear. Tony Stark is a classic Enneagram Type 7. His entire story is about learning to face reality instead of just escaping it. That journey perfectly mirrors and completes Captain America's arc. And in the end, Tony's Type 7 personality, fun, adventurous, but ultimately searching for meaning, really embodies the entire spirit of the MCU itself.
And that leaves us with one last thought to chew on. These movies are our escape, right? But just like Tony, they're at their absolute best when they embrace their darker, sadder, more realistic side. So if our greatest form of escapism is made better when it actually confronts reality, what does that say about what we're all truly looking for when we sit down to watch